Don't tell him he's adopted, my mother hissed, grabbing my arm as I walked past with the microphone. The wedding reception buzzed around us, crystal glasses clinking, fake laughter bouncing off marble walls. My brother Alex stood near the cake, handsome in his tuxedo, completely oblivious to the truth that had haunted me for 15 years. I looked down at my mother's manicured fingers digging into my skin, the same hands that had slapped me when I was 13 and found the adoption papers hidden in her drawer. The same hands that had written a check to send me to boarding school when I threatened to tell Alex the truth. Of course not, I smiled, sweet as poison. I wouldn't want to ruin his perfect day. She released me, smoothing her designer dress, relief flooding her face. She never could read me very well. Never noticed how I'd stopped being afraid of her years ago. How I'd spent the last decade preparing for exactly this moment. The wedding planner signaled it was time for speeches. Perfect timing. I stepped onto the small stage, adjusting my bridesmaid's dress. The one they'd chosen because it made me look appropriately plain next to the bride. The microphone felt cool in my hand, like the truth I was about to unleash. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady. I'm Sarah, Alex's sister. Well, sort of. Mom's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Dad's face darkened like an approaching storm. But I kept going, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with 15 years of suppressed justice. You see, family is a funny thing, I continued, watching Alex's confused expression. Sometimes it's blood, sometimes it's choice, and sometimes... I pulled out an envelope from my clutch. It's a lie that's gone on far too long. The room went silent. Even the waiters stopped moving, sensing the tension crackling through the air. I could see Mom starting to stand, Dad moving toward the stage, but they were too late. They'd always been too late when it came to stopping me. Alex, I turned to my brother, ignoring the chaos beginning to unfold. Remember when I was 13 and I told you I found something important? Remember how Mom said I was lying, attention-seeking, disturbed? He nodded slowly, the memory flickering behind his eyes. His new bride, Madison, gripped his arm, her perfect white dress suddenly looking as fake as everything else in this family. I wasn't lying, I said softly, opening the envelope. I was trying to protect you from what they did to your real parents. The room erupted. Mom screamed my name. Dad lunged for the stage, but I was already pulling out the documents, birth certificates, hospital records, court papers. 15 years of carefully gathered evidence, each page a bullet in the gun I'd been loading since they sent me away. Your real parents didn't die in a car crash. I continued, my voice cutting through the chaos. They didn't abandon you. They were destroyed by our parents, piece by piece, until they had no choice but to let you go. Security guards, hired by our parents, of course, started moving through the crowd. But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and her voice filled the room. Clara Thompson, Alex's birth mother, telling her story through tears. They threatened to ruin us, her recorded voice echoed. Said they'd make sure we never worked again, never had a life worth living. They wanted a son, and they chose Alex. They took everything from us to get him. Alex stood frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Madison had stepped away from him, her perfect makeup unable to hide her shock. Our parents had reached the stage, but they couldn't stop what was already in motion. Want to know the best part? I looked directly at Mom and Dad. I found Clara 3 years ago. She's been waiting, hoping, praying for this day. She's outside right now. The doors at the back of the reception hall opened. A woman in her late 50s walked in, elegant despite her obvious nervousness. She had Alex's eyes, his smile, the same way of holding herself. The resemblance was undeniable. No, Mom whispered, but her voice held no power anymore. You can't do this. I already have, I replied, finally letting the years of pain seep into my voice. You sent me away because I found the truth, shipped me off to boarding school, told everyone I was troubled, difficult, attention-seeking. But you forgot something crucial. I'm smarter than you. I always was. I turned back to the crowd, to the hundreds of wealthy guests who'd come to celebrate the wedding of the year. Would you like to know what else they did? How they systematically destroyed Clara and James Thompson's lives? How they used their money and influence to blacklist them from every job, every opportunity, until giving up Alex was their only choice. Dad surged forward, his face purple with rage. Security. Get her out of here. But I wasn't done. I pulled out one final document and his face went pale. Remember this, Dad? The real adoption agreement? The one where you promised the Thompsons they could stay in Alex's life. The one you violated the day after it was signed. The security guards had reached me, but they hesitated. Something in my voice, in the documents I held, made them pause. Go ahead, I smiled at them. Remove me. But first, you should know that everything I've said, every document I've shown, has already been sent to every guest's email, along with proof of how my parents acquired their fortune, who they really hurt along the way, and what they did to keep their perfect family image intact. Mom collapsed into a chair, her perfectly curated facade crumbling. Dad stood frozen, his authority evaporating in the harsh light of truth. Alex walked forward, his legs shaky but his eyes clear. He looked at Clara, really looked at her, and something passed between them. Recognition, connection, truth. Why, he turned to me, his voice barely a whisper. Why did you wait until now? I stepped down from the stage and handed him the envelope full of evidence. Because now you're legally in control of the family trusts. Now they can't touch you, can't manipulate you, can't hide the truth anymore. Madison had disappeared somewhere in the chaos. The guests were murmuring, phones buzzing as they opened the emails I'd sent. Our parents' carefully constructed world was shattering around us, and I felt nothing but relief. Miss, one of the security guards touched my arm gently. We need you to leave. I nodded, handed Alex my phone, still playing his birth mother's testimony. Everything you need to know is in there. Every truth they tried to bury. Every lie they told to keep their perfect image. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Mom's desperate voice. Alex, please, we did it for you. We gave you everything. But Alex wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Clara, at the woman who shared his eyes, his smile, his truth. And I knew, in that moment, that my job was done. The night air was cool on my face as I stepped outside. Behind me, 15 years of lies were unraveling. Ahead of me stretched freedom, real freedom, not the gilded cage they tried to lock me in. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Documents received and filed. Proceedings beginning tomorrow. I smiled, thinking of the trust fund they thought they'd locked me out of, the shares they thought they'd secured, the power they thought they held. By morning, they'd learned just how thoroughly I'd outplayed them. The valet brought my car, and I slipped him an extra $100. If anyone asks, you never saw which way I went. He nodded, understanding the weight of secrets in his hands. I drove away from the reception hall. From the chaos I'd unleashed, from the family that had never really been mine. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, legal fights, public scandal, the inevitable fallout. But for now, I had given Alex the truth he deserved, exposed the lies that had poisoned our lives, and finally set us both free. The city lights blurred as I drove, but my vision was clearer than it had ever been. Sometimes the greatest act of love is destroying everything to rebuild it honest and new. And I had just lit the match that would burn it all down. The aftermath hit faster than even I expected. By morning, my phone had over 200 missed calls, not just from family, but from reporters, lawyers, and people I hadn't heard from in years. The story was everywhere. Prominent business family's dark secret exposed at wedding. I watched it unfold from my hotel room, sipping coffee and feeling strangely calm. The room service waiter who brought my breakfast didn't recognize me from the grainy photos circulating online. To him, I was just another guest, not the woman who just detonated a social nuclear bomb. A text from Alex lit up my screen. I need to see you, please. I hesitated. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, the conversation I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. But now that it was here, my hands shook slightly as I typed back. The coffee shop on 7th, 1 hour. The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the main streets where photographers might lurk. Alex was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he hadn't slept. Clara sat beside him, their matching profiles striking in the morning light. You look terrible, I said, sliding into the seat across from them. You look ready for this, he replied, studying my face. How long? How long have you really been planning this? The aftermath hit faster than even I expected. By morning, my phone had over 200 missed calls, not just from family, but from reporters, lawyers, and people I hadn't heard from in years. The story was everywhere. Prominent business family's dark secret exposed at wedding. I watched it unfold from my hotel room, sipping coffee and feeling strangely calm. The room service waiter who brought my breakfast didn't recognize me from the grainy photos circulating online. To him, I was just another guest, not the woman who just detonated a social nuclear bomb. A text from Alex lit up my screen. "I need to see you. Please." I hesitated. This was the moment I'd been preparing for, the conversation I'd rehearsed 1,000 times. But now that it was here, my hands shook slightly as I typed back. "The coffee shop on 7th. 1 hour." The cafe was quiet, tucked away from the main streets where photographers might lurk. Alex was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth, looking like he hadn't slept. Clara sat beside him, their matching profiles striking in the morning light. "You look terrible," I said, sliding into the seat across from them. "You look ready for this," he replied, studying my face. "How long? How long have you really been planning this?" I stirred my coffee, watching the cream create patterns in the dark liquid. "Since the day they sent me away. 15 years of watching, waiting, gathering evidence, building a case they couldn't dismiss or bury." Clara reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as she touched mine. "Sarah, what you did. Thank you doesn't seem enough." "Don't thank me yet," I said, pulling out my tablet and opening a folder I prepared years ago. "There's more, so much more." Alex leaned forward. "More than destroying my wedding and exposing our parents as kidnappers. They didn't just take you, Alex. They built their entire empire on stolen children, broken families, and blackmail. You were just the one they kept." His face went pale. Clara's hand tightened on mine. "What are you talking about?" he whispered. I turned the tablet toward them. Mom and Dad's real business wasn't just investment banking. They ran a sophisticated network, targeting vulnerable families, using their connections to pressure people into giving up their children. Some went to wealthy families who couldn't adopt legally. Others, well, the money trail gets darker there. Alex looked like he might be sick. "How did you find all this? Remember Tommy, my troubled friend from boarding school?" I smiled grimly. "He's actually an investigative journalist now. We've been building this case for years. The evidence goes back decades." Clara's voice shook. "There are others, like Alex?" I nodded. "Dozens, maybe hundreds. That's why I had to wait until now. The trust fund doesn't just control the family money. It controls all their records, their real estate, everything they used to hide this. And now I control the trust," Alex said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "As of yesterday, yes, they can't destroy the evidence anymore. They can't silence anyone else." The cafe door chimed. I glanced up to see Madison walking in, her designer sunglasses not quite hiding her red eyes. She spotted us and froze. "It's okay," Alex called softly. "Come sit." She approached cautiously, like we might bite. "I didn't know," she said, looking at me, "about any of it. I swear." "I know," I replied. "That's why I waited until after the ceremony. The marriage is legal. You're part of the trust now, too. They can't touch you either." Madison sat beside Alex, her perfectly manicured hands shaking slightly as she reached for his. "What happens now?" I pulled out another envelope. "Now we go public with everything. Tommy's story runs tomorrow in the National Times. The FBI has already opened an investigation. But first," I slid a document across the table to Alex. "You need to sign this." He read it quickly, his lawyer's training evident in how his eyes caught every detail. "You're giving me control of everything." "No," I smiled. "I'm giving us control. Equal shares, equal responsibility. You, me, and Madison. 3 signatures required for any major decisions. They'll never be able to manipulate any of us again." "What about me?" Clara asked quietly. "You get what they promised you 15 years ago. A place in Alex's life, if he wants it, in compensation for everything they took from you." Alex looked at his birth mother, really looked at her. "I do want it," he said softly. "I want to know everything." Madison squeezed his hand. "We both do." I stood up, gathering my things. "The reporters will find us soon. You should all go to my place. It's secure, off their radar. Tommy will meet us there to go over the story before it breaks." "Sarah," Alex caught my arm as I turned to leave. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? All those years." I looked at my brother. Adopted or not, he was still my brother, and felt the last of my anger fade. "Because they would have destroyed you like they tried to destroy me. I needed you safe, successful, and legally untouchable first. And now we burn it all down and build something true from the ashes. As I walked out of the cafe, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. You've ruined everything. I hope you're happy. I typed back quickly. No, Dad, I just started fixing what you broke. The war wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time in 15 years, we were fighting it together, with truth as our weapon and justice as our shield. And somewhere in a city, in their perfect mansion with their perfect lives, our parents were finally learning what it felt like to be powerless. It wasn't revenge, it was restoration. And it was just the beginning. The explosion came 3 days later. Not a physical blast, but a social and legal detonation that shook our world to its core. Tommy's article hit at exactly 6 a.m., and by 6:05, all hell broke loose. Prominent Wilson FAMLO XPOZD. Decades of child terror AF5CKing and finance ILFRUD. The headline screamed across every major news outlet. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since. But I was ready. We all were. I sat in my lawyer's office, watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens. Alex and Madison were there too, along with Clara and Tommy. We'd barely slept in days, preparing for this moment. They're being arrested now, Tommy announced, his eyes glued to his laptop. Your parents, their associates, everyone we identified in the network. I watched the live footage of our parents being let out of their mansion in handcuffs. Mom still managed to look elegant somehow, her head held high. Dad just looked old and defeated. Their perfect world had crumbled in less than a week. Sarah, Alex's voice was quiet. Look at this. He turned his phone toward me. Our family group chat, dormant since the wedding, had exploded with messages from relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, all claiming they never knew or had suspicions but couldn't prove anything. Funny how they're all innocent now, I said, scrolling through the desperate attempts to distance themselves from a scandal. Madison, who'd proven herself surprisingly steady under pressure, squeezed Alex's hand. The lawyers say we need to freeze them all out. No comments, no responses. She was right. We planned this carefully. Every response, every action had to be precise. The trust fund was secure, the evidence was protected, and the truth was finally out. Ms. Wilson, my lawyer called from his desk. The FBI wants to speak with you again. They found more files. I nodded, unsurprised. How many more children? Dozens, he replied grimly, dating back to the early 90s. Your parents' network was extensive. Clara, who'd been quiet all morning, suddenly spoke up. I want to help find them. All of them. Their families deserve to know. Alex looked at his birth mother, pride and pain mixing in his expression. We'll help. All of us. The door burst open. Tommy rushed in, his journalist instincts practically vibrating. You need to see this. Your mother just released a statement. We gathered around his laptop, watching the video play. Mom, somehow looking immaculate despite being in custody, stared directly into the camera. My daughter Sarah has chosen to destroy our family with lies and manipulation, she began, her voice steady. But what she fails to understand is that everything we did for love, for family, for giving children better lives. I laughed, a hollow sound. Still trying to control the narrative. We gave these children opportunities they never would have had otherwise, she continued. We gave them privilege, education, futures. Sarah's vindictive actions have now put all of that at risk. Alex shut the laptop, his face hard. Enough. We have work to do. He was right. While our parents tried to spin their crimes as acts of charity, we had real work ahead of us, finding the other families, making amends, rebuilding what they destroyed. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad's private number. You could have had everything. Now you'll have nothing. I showed it to Alex, who took my phone and typed back, No, Dad. Now we have the truth, and that's worth more than your entire empire. The next few hours were a blur of lawyers, FBI agents, and reporters. We gave no interviews, made no statements. Let the evidence speak for itself. By evening, we gathered at my apartment. Alex, Madison, Clara, Tommy, and me. The city lights twinkled beyond my windows, unchanged despite our world shifting on its axis. I found something, Tommy said, pulling out his laptop. In the old records, There's a property in Vermont purchased through a shell company. It looks like where they kept the children, I finished, before placing them with families. Alex stood up, pacing. We need to document everything. Every property, every transaction, every child. We will, I assured him. But first, we need to protect ourselves. They still have allies, people who benefited from their network. They'll try to stop us. Madison, who'd been scanning social media, nodded. It's already starting. Some of the families are claiming they didn't know, that they were victims too. Let them claim whatever they want, Clara said firmly. The truth doesn't change. I looked at our unlikely family, brought together by lies but united by truth. Tomorrow we start tracking down every child, every family. We make this right. And our parents? Alex asked quietly. They face justice, I replied. Real justice, not the kind they could buy their way out of. As if on cue, my phone rang. An unknown number. I put it on speaker. Sarah, Mom's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. Please, you have to understand. We only wanted. Goodbye, Mom, I said and hung up. The room fell silent. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Perhaps more arrests, more revelations, more pieces of their network falling apart. You know what's strange? I said finally. I don't feel happy or sad. I just feel free. Alex hugged me, his arms strong and sure. We all are. Finally. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, more revelations, more battles to fight. But tonight in this room with these people, we had something our parents never understood: truth, love, and the strength to face whatever came next. The empire they built on lies was falling, but from its ashes, we would build something real, something honest, something worth fighting for. And that was a victory greater than any revenge could ever be. 1 year later, I stood in front of the newly established Wilson Family Reconciliation Foundation, watching families stream in for our first official reunion. The building, once my parents' flagship office, now served a different purpose, reuniting the children they trafficked with their biological families. Alex and Clara worked side by side at the welcome desk, their matching smiles no longer a painful reminder of secrets, but a celebration of truth. Madison, now 7 months pregnant, coordinated the event with the efficiency of someone who'd found her true calling. 142, Tommy said, appearing beside me with his notebook. That's how many families we've reunited so far. I nodded, watching a teenage girl embrace her birth mother for the first time. And how many more to go? At least another 100. Your parents' network was extensive. The words still made my stomach turn, but we'd learned to channel that anger into action. The foundation, funded by the former Wilson fortune, provided not just reunification services, but therapy, legal aid, and financial support for affected families. My phone buzzed, a notification from the prison where our parents were awaiting trial. Mom wanted to see me. Again. I deleted it without opening. Still not ready? Alex asked, joining us during a quiet moment. I don't think I'll ever be ready, I replied honestly. Some bridges need to stay burned. He understood. He hadn't visited them either. We'd both received letters, phone calls, messages through lawyers, all attempting to justify, explain, manipulate. We've learned to let them go unanswered. The foundation's main hall was filled with tears, laughter, and healing. Families shared stories. Children met siblings they never knew existed. Parents finally got answers to decades-old wounds. Ms. Wilson. A small voice caught my attention. A young girl, maybe 12, stood before me. Are you the one who found us? I knelt down to her level. I helped, but it was a team effort. Are you here with your family? She nodded, pointing to a couple talking with one of our counselors. They're my real parents, the people who raised me. They told me I was abandoned. And now you know the truth, I said softly. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked, wise beyond her years. I looked at Alex, at Clara, at the family we built from the ashes of lies. The hurt changes. It becomes something else, strength, maybe, or purpose. Madison called everyone to attention, announcing the start of our sharing circle. Families gathered, forming a large ring in the main hall. One by one, they stood to tell their stories, not just of loss and pain, but of hope and healing. When it was my turn, I stood feeling the weight of all those eyes. A year ago, I stood at my brother's wedding and told a truth that had been buried for 15 years. Today, I stand here knowing that truth, no matter how painful, sets us free. My parents built an empire on stolen children and broken families. But we're building something different, a foundation of honesty, healing, and hope. The applause was warm, genuine. These people understood, really understood, what it meant to have your world shattered and rebuilt. After the event, our core team gathered in my office: Alex, Madison, Clara, Tommy, and me. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in colors too beautiful for such a heavy day. Mom called again. Alex said quietly, said she has information about more children. Another manipulation, I replied, tired of their games. Probably, he agreed. But what if it's not? I looked at the wall of photos, hundreds of faces, some reunited, some still searching. Then we'll find them another way. We don't need their help to fix what they broke. Madison rubbed her belly thoughtfully. Our daughter will know the truth from the start. All of it. And she'll have a real family, Clara added. One built on love, not lies. I touched the founding document of our foundation, framed on my wall. The Wilson name, once synonymous with power and privilege, now stood for redemption and reconciliation. We can't undo what they did, I said finally. But we can make sure it never happens again. As we left the office that evening, I caught my reflection in the window. Not the angry sister seeking revenge, not the scared girl who found adoption papers, but someone stronger. Someone who turned pain into purpose. Some stories don't end with revenge or justice. They end with healing, with truth, with hope. And sometimes that's the greatest victory of all.